Hello, and everybody, and welcome to Economics Monday on the IBM TV channel. We have a lot of, thank you, good stuff to share this morning. And the thing is, we're going to start with what we're looking at, which is the, looks like Exxon and Chevron are looking to merge, which I think will be a huge merger if this thing does take place. So, yeah, that'll be pretty exciting. I think one of the most exciting things we've seen in a long time is the merger of Exxon and Chevron. Now, whether or not that'll take place or not, I don't know. But they are in discussions right now to create the second largest oil company in the world and I kept trying to figure out, okay, what is the largest one? Because ExxonMobil for years was the largest company in the world. Apparently, Aramco is the largest oil company in the world. And so if ExxonMobil merges with Chevron, they will offset or be number two still behind Aramco. So that's a pretty big part of what's going on today on Economics Monday. We are definitely going to take a look at that because it's the thing that's right now the biggest part of the news. The other thing we're looking at is GameStop. If you haven't heard of what happened with GameStop, it was a stock that was actually bid up by social media participants through Reddit. And so what happens is these people got on Reddit and they found GameStop and they decided just by themselves, well, we're just going to bid up the stock. Well, they bid it up quite high. And what happens is the real question is, the metrics make any sense of GameStop? And the thing is, we didn't really see the metrics make any sense, but it didn't matter because they bid up the stock to $200-300 a share. I'm not even sure where it's going right now, but that was a big one because the fundamentals or the metrics of it doesn't show. But what we're looking at today is not just a world of investors, but we're also looking at a world of traders, and there's a difference. There are people that like to trade. They do day trading. They do weekly trading, they do monthly trading, and they're moving off of the short swings of the stock market. And then there's the investors, and the investors like to park money for a long term. It's just a different form of investing. Now, with that, it can be quite exciting because what we saw in GameStop is a run up in the stock, and the investors go, no, the metrics aren't there, so they started to short selling it based on the metrics weren't there. Well, the people that were the individual investors say, hey, we're going to stay anyway, which they did. And all of a sudden, the stock is still high and you lose your short position. In other words, you say, I'm going to sell the stock. Let's say it's trading at 300 a share. I'm going to sell it at 290 a share 6 months from now. And the stock never goes down to 290. Yet you bought a contract to sell it at 290. So you could get out, make a fortune, and the stock never regressed because the the traders stayed in, causing hedge funds to literally sit on the brink of bankruptcy. In other words, the investor hedge funds are sitting there going, hey, we're not doing too good because of the GameStop stock. So the thing is, I find that to be pretty interesting. Probably the number two issue in the economic world today. And then the third part we're going to look at, of course, is the bill that's in Congress right now to add another debt to the United States of several $trillion, actually, is what they're looking at. And with that, I think it's about a $1.9 trillion bill. With that, it pushes the national debt in the United States getting closer and closer to that magic number of $30 trillion. And even today, the United States has the national debt actually exceeds the gross domestic product, which is not a good factor to be at. And we're going to look at the national debt. It is an issue, but it's an issue that most economists and many people, it's like a can. We can kick it down the street. It's a debt. Well, we'll pay it when we get to it. But unfortunately, it's become a real problem, at least for people in the United States, as to how are we going to deal with this national debt on a going forward basis. Also today, we should have around 11:30 Eastern time, we should have Shambhu Pokhrel will be joining us from Kathmandu, Nepal. and he heads the World Trade Group out of Kathmandu, which is a pretty interesting philosophy. What they're doing over there is that in Kathmandu, which is borders China and India, they actually, just a minute, we're going to take just a minute break and I'll be right back. And that was one of our introductions. By the way, we do also have some new shows coming on board on the IBM TV network, what we're going to discuss. And something that I think is pretty exciting is that this actually is a show that originates out of Switzerland, and it's called The Swiss Impact. And with that, I just got a confirmation that coming up on Swiss Impact, we're going to have the Prince of Liechtenstein will actually be on the show. And that should take place about 2 weeks from now. For those who haven't been to that show actually broadcast every Friday morning Eastern time. It's around 9 a.m. in the morning. And so the thing is, we're going to have that take place on Friday. And we have a couple other shows that are advancing forward. For those who have missed it, this is a show you don't want to miss because we do discuss a lot of investing, and this is called Investing with Sasha. Now, this takes place on Wednesday at 1 o'clock, and we're bringing in investors from all over the world to discuss modern investing. And so let's take a look at that show. That's coming up on Wednesday on the IBM TV network. Okay, yeah, that'll be coming up Wednesday on the IBM TV network. Certainly, it's going to be a show that you definitely want to go to, which will take place on Wednesday. So we'll be seeing that on Wednesday. On Friday, we do have a show that's been pretty popular with Dr. Drummel. Let's go take a look at that one.
I welcome all of you to IBM TV and to this show, which is Dr. Dhawan's live chat, and I'm your host, Dr. Sanjay Dhawan. I'm an eye surgeon practicing in New Delhi. The live chat is a show which talks about any and all aspects of life, any subject, anything that concerns the life or it improves its quality is what we will be talking about. How to plan for it, how to prepare for it. So we'll be talking about all of this. Looking forward to seeing all of you every Friday.
And that's become a pretty popular show. So just for people that want to know what's going to be happening on the IBM TV network, we do have a lot of stuff that's coming down that's really popular. And for those who like financial shows, because we're expanding our financial show program, we also have Financial Friday on the IBM TV network. Yeah, so that's actually on the IBM TV network for the people that can't get enough of financial shows. Just remember to tune in Friday. It's Financial Friday on the IBM TV network. So like I said, we do have quite a few new shows and great shows that are coming up on the IBM TV network. We have about 10 of them that are under development. So we're definitely working on that. And even Financial Friday, we even upgraded them. We'll show you what they look like now. And Tax Game. This is another one that we're adding Friday. This is one that's pretty exciting with Senior trial attorney Scott Estel.
Hello, my name is Scott Estel. I'm a former IRS senior trial attorney and now a tax attorney in private practice.
A common question that I get asked as a tax attorney is, are there deductions that I can take as a sole proprietor that I can't take if I have an LLC?
Taxes are more than what you pay for clothing, shelter, and food combined every year. And yet a lot of us just think, well, it's April 15th, I paid my tax bill, filed my returns, I don't have to think about taxes again for another year. And if that's the case, you've lost the tax game. You've lost it.
And that's every week on the IBM TV network is Winning the Tax Game with tax expert Scott Estel. It's something you do want to listen to because I know that taxes are coming up for everybody, at least in the United States, in March, because we have the corporate tax return that's due, and then you have your individual return that's due in April. And you do need to hear from the experts in that particular area. So we have a whole program on that. On taxes. So right now we actually have two programs on taxation. One's going to be later on today on the IBM TV network, which is it's going to be dealing with more sophisticated tax planning. And then we also have Winning the Tax Game with Scott Estel. So that's also on the IBM TV network. So coming up today will be Economics Monday, and we're going to be, like I say, discussing some of the major macroeconomic changes that are taking place not just in the United States, but also throughout the world. The biggest headlines was the potential merger of Exxon and Chevron. Whether or not, of course, the merger will even be granted, because it would create the second largest oil company in the world. Now, for those who don't recall, Exxon just got delisted several months ago from the Dow Jones. I mean, it was pretty bad, that they were delisted. Basically, people were saying Exxon's not a major player anymore. But with this merger with Chevron, who knows? They may creep back in, because they certainly cannot be ignored. And frankly, the reason why is that the shift toward using more sustainable energy rather than using oil and coal-based energy throughout the world. Now, I don't think the shift is going to take place that quickly, but of course other commentators think, oh yes, it's going to be a rapid switch over to electric vehicles. But one commentator says, well, electric is still generated a lot by oil refineries, so it's not like they're going to lose anything. The only way it would supplant the oil industry is that electricity is generated through solar and through hydroelectricity, and we just don't need oil anymore. I just don't see that taking place anytime really soon. So to me, it's more of a myth than reality. But so we're going to be discussing Exxon and also the run-up in stocks that we've seen in the market. I haven't checked it today, but GameStop and another one that's run up pretty high, way beyond its price-earnings ratio, is actually Tesla. And arguments have been made that, well, Tesla really does deserve its value. Maybe, because now we see General Motors announcing they're going to move to all electric cars. China's come out with electric cars. In other words, Tesla doesn't have monopoly on the electric car. And there's a lot of other car companies out there that could come and compete with these car companies. So the real question is whether or not Tesla is going to be able to maintain that price earnings ratio, which is sitting around 1,700 a share. So I am not sure exactly where that's going. It's going to be, like I said, it's going to be very interesting to see what's going to happen as time goes by. Swiss Impact, like I said, on that show, we just got off working with the producer on that show. Swiss Impact Association this Friday, they're going to have a very special guest, and also we're going to have the president of Liechtenstein, the Prince of Liechtenstein. It's a principality. Will be on 2 weeks. But let's take a look at Swiss Impact. this is a show that's devoted to impact investing. In other words, investing in areas that not particularly you're buying a stock, but you're also buying a stock that has value by impacting the globe on a positive format.
Hi, it's Sveta and Ben, the world's #1 impact investing experts. I have been educating thousands of people on the topic, how can you use finance as a force for good?
And I have been helping hundreds of entrepreneurs all around the world to set up, run, and establish their companies and businesses.
Do you even know what is impact investing and how can you get engaged in that?
Did you know that in the coming years, we are going to lose 26 trillion of our GDP due to the climate change? But on the other hand, are you also aware of all the opportunities that the sector has to offer?
Are you aware of changing policies and businesses which already impact every little part of your life?
To have the answer to all these questions, come and join us at Swiss Impact with Banerjees on every Friday afternoon 3 o'clock Swiss time, starting from 15 January.
We will be interviewing thought leaders, world leaders, policymakers, investors, businesses, which are already engaged in this sector. So see you on Friday.
See you on Friday.
Yes, and that is the Swiss Impact investing, which is it's going to be a pretty good show coming up in, like I say, about 2 weeks from now. We are going to have the president, I keep saying president, the prime minister of Liechtenstein will be on that show. Let me forward this over to Shaquille. Make sure he gets this. Okay. Yeah. Okay. And the thing is, we should have joining us shortly will be Shaquille Latimer, who's a billion-dollar money manager out of Australia, and he actually operates a couple $1 billion and manages them. And I can tell you that's got to be almost a full-time job. But the Swiss Impact, like I said, I'm looking very forward to seeing that coming up. We do also have some other new shows, like I said, that are under development right now on the IBM TV network. So it's something you do want to stay tuned with on this particular area. What else do we have going on in the economic world is, of course, COVID-19. COVID-19 is the 600-pound gorilla that's sitting out there. And with that, it's really taken a beating on a lot of the economies here in the United States, but also abroad. The only economy that we've seen that has been up, and they were up very small, was China. It was up about 1.4%. All the other economies are trailing around the world, and we do need to get COVID-19 under control. When that's going to get under control, I don't know. The thing is, world is changing very rapidly, and it's something that we're just going to have to deal with. But somebody also we love to deal with who just beamed in from Australia. Let's give a warm welcome to our special guest today, Shaquille Latimer. Shaquille, welcome.
Good morning.
Monday. Yeah, it's good. It's good morning. I guess a lot of people were visiting the economic, what they call it, the World Edition, which takes place prior to this. And we have, so I went over some of the upcoming shows that we're having on the IBM TV network. Not this Friday, but next Friday, the Prince of Liechtenstein will be on Swiss Impact. So it'll be very interesting to watch. Now, last week we had the former president of Mauritius on Swiss Impact. So Ben is putting together, I think, a pretty interesting group of people.
Ask Ben to tell the Prince that I'm still unimpressed about the lack of air conditioning in Liechtenstein. He's banned it. He has banned air conditioning from Liechtenstein. That's why the office is there, but I don't live there.
I have never been to Liechtenstein. So, it's just like I was telling Ben, I said, the fact is the Prince of Liechtenstein may be well known in Europe, but in the United States, we don't even know who they are. So
I would wonder whether what percentage of the American population would even know where Liechtenstein is? And I don't mean that as disrespectful to America. I would wonder what percentage of Australians would know where Liechtenstein
is. That's absolutely true.
Well,
I will tell you, Mauritius was a tough one. When they said the former president of Mauritius, I was going, that's an island somewhere, right? So I had to actually go look it up. It's like off Madagascar. It's actually a beautiful island, a great place, a fairly decent sized city and a fairly decent sized economy. But people in the United States were so far removed from places like Mauritius and Liechtenstein that we barely know these.
I know they've got. I've never been there, but I know they've got sort of the white sandy beaches and all that sort of stuff.
Right.
We're just off Madagascar.
Yeah, that's what it shows up here. Looks to me, because I have to get my local globe right here. See, there's Madagascar, and there is.
Oh, I see. Yep, I see where it is.
There you go. Yeah. So right off Madagascar is a group of islands called Mauritius, and the thing is, then I went to go to the internet, to Google, to look at it better, and it looks to be a really, it's almost like the Bahamas over here, a vacation place, like the Hawaiian Islands or Bermuda, something very similar to that. But really more like the Bahamas.
In Bermuda and the Bahamas, there's no taxes, whereas in Hawaii, not so much, right?
Yeah, true. And part of the reason we don't know much about it is, remember, we were going to buy Greenland, and we got turned down. And President Trump never said, "Let's go buy Mauritius." If he said that, then it'd be on the map. That's all he has to be saying. Hey, look, we need to go buy Mauritius. It's a nice little country. We actually do have a place there called Diego Garcia. So we actually do have one of the islands that we use as one of our bases in the United States, which Diego Garcia is.
America has bases everywhere. So
I know. Well, that's our whole idea. Wait. You understand? Our whole idea is world conquest. You do know that.
Not anymore. It's not.
Oh well, we need to change administrations to get back on track. World conquest.
You've just got this one now. Now you're about destroying America. And once you do,
I didn't say destroy America. I said world conquest.
No, but that's what America used to be about, world conquest. Now America is about destroying itself with high taxes and high regulations.
I got my IBM. Yeah, well, you know what we were having. Okay.
So the big question is about these Reddit users. What are they doing with GameStop?
Okay, well, that was one of the three things we're going to discuss. First, we're going to discuss the ExxonMobil Chevron merger. Now, that's very important to me because I bought Exxon stock. So the first thing I'm going is that, oh, that's great, Exxon stock's going to go up. No, not necessarily. Just because there's a merger doesn't mean, and I haven't checked it today, I've been busy, doesn't mean the stock's going to go up. It could be a bad deal for them. We don't know, But I thought it was pretty important, Shaquille, because that would put Exxon back maybe on the S&P 500 and the Dow, which they got kicked off because they were a company going nowhere. At least that was their attitude. And maybe they are going to go somewhere with the Exxon Chevron merger. And I thought that was pretty exciting.
They haven't actually confirmed that they're going to merge, are they? They just confirmed.
No, it's talk. All is talks.
Now, these are two prior, correct me if I'm wrong, Chevron and Exxon were both prior or formerly part of Standard Oil, right? I know.
It was part of the Standard Oil. Remember when Standard Oil was broken up? One of them.
Well, I actually remember those days. I wasn't around then, Nick, but.
Okay. All right. I'm showing my age. Okay. So when the antitrust guys came in, they broke up the monopoly. Exxon, Standard Oil actually became another company. Chevron, they broke them up. Now, just like other breakups, they reform and maybe they'll get married again. So now it's looking to be a merger again. Now the whole theory was, Shaquille, lack of oil. We don't need oil anymore because of everything's going to be electric. And also what happened is General Motors announced we're going to go all electric. Now, what's going to happen to your Tesla stock at 1750 price earnings ratio when a big monster like GM moves into the electric cars? Hello?
Well, yeah. Okay. Well, first of all, I don't know how much of Tesla's increase is based on electric cars versus, for example, the SpaceX projects and other technologies. But just back to oil, I think that sometimes people misunderstand that, even if we were to switch completely to electric vehicles and we're able to produce electricity in an environmentally friendly way, oil still doesn't go away. We still use oil for a lot of other things and oil products for a lot of other things. And people talk about the Koch brothers quite frequently. And generally speaking, when you hear the Koch brothers name, you hear about them in connection with, being, manipulative of the political process and all this sort of stuff. But what their business is actually taking oil and splitting it into, or what their father and grandfather did was, taking oil and splitting it into other types of products. So, oil's not going to go away. We're still going to need it. I think that it'll be great when we can see alternatives. People are starting to use, paper and cardboard containers for, water and all that sort of stuff. You're seeing sugarcane pulp being turned into like the cup holders and things for coffee cups and all that sort of stuff. So that's all great, but we do still need and use oil for a lot of different substances.
Yeah, I mean, look at the airplanes. They're not solar airplanes. I haven't heard of those yet lately that will carry any decent amount of payload. Even the satellites that go up, Tesla puts satellites. I believe they're not solar powered rockets right now. So fossil fuels are still going to be around, and that's my bet. So I'm a little bit of contrarian. Now, you did want to mention GameStop, and I did want to get into that because to me, GameStop is Tesla on steroids. I haven't seen where they're at, but I have gone into Reddit and I'm infiltrating their groups, which is, by the way, very simple to do. That's the reason Russians can hack everything, because it's really easier to do anything. And there is a whole group of people in that are basically bidding up the GameStop stock. Now, years ago, well, not even today, like if I worked for a Wall Street firm, which I don't, and I bid up a stock, and then I promoted the stock, and then I dumped the stock, the SEC says, hello. Okay? I mean, seriously. Okay, but now we have a situation.
I don't know this man. We're not associated with each other. I don't know what he is talking about.
I'm talking about pump and dump.
It's SEC. I'm sorry, ASIC. I don't know anything about.
I know, right. But the thing is, since I'm a lawyer, I can talk a little bit about the legal aspects. My first securities law course was Texas versus Gulf Sulfur, as we studied 10b-5 actions for the viewers who know about insider trading, which they caught Martha Stewart on. Probably, it's a ticky-tack. Oh, lying to somebody, right?
Lying to a federal agent, right? This is prosecutorial misconduct. This is what I've talked about before. The weaponization of the legislature, the weaponization of the judicial process against the citizenry. They couldn't get her on insider trading, so they got her for lying to a federal agent and then sentenced her to a jail sentence. Now, hey, she's got lots of money. She could afford the best lawyers. Sure. Imagine the mere mortals, the poor everyday person who ends up being, caught up in one of these things.
Right.
It's a disgrace. But yeah, she was not done. For the record, she was not.
Right. I'm glad you cleared the record up, counselor, and see the good attorney would basically have her plead the fifth through the entire case and let them go prove their case on everything that they had. But unfortunately, something happened, and I know she had to have a good attorney. Something happened, and this happens often. This we discussed in the lawyer's den. The attorneys tell people to do something and they ignore you. Okay, or even worse, the attorney wants to know the story and they lie to you. I mean, so the thing is, as an attorney, you end up in a situation where you're going like, I didn't really want you to say it. Oh, but I need to go forward and tell my story. No, you don't. Not when the FEDIs come down. When the FEDIs come down, you know nothing. You say nothing. You speak only through counsel. Okay?
Yeah, if you're American, unlike Australia, we don't have any rights. If you are American and you actually have or theory, you have
a right to counsel. We have a right to counsel.
Plead the sixth because Justice Scalia, I believe, got this wrong. I think he was great on amendment issues. Mm-hmm. I think he got this one wrong, because he says that by pleading the fifth, an inference can be made. I don't think that is the correct ruling. But anyway, so plead the sixth. say you won't speak to them without a lawyer, and that's it. Tell them your name, address, and date of birth, and don't say another word.
That's basically correct. And all criminal proceedings, the minute the federales or somebody gets to you, that's what I tell people to do. Wait till
criminal proceedings. I'd say any civil proceeding. I mean, don't be a smart ass. The police pull you over for a speeding ticket. I'm not going to tell you anything without a lawyer. I mean, don't be ridiculous. But if they're calling you and they say, you're not target of my investigation, good. I want immunity.
Right. Yeah, right. I mean, the thing is, when I watch what happens, how people interact with the police, I mean, they're kind of like asking for it. It reminds me similar to how countries interact with national debt. They tend to be asking for it. And with that, we do have the former Comptroller General of the United States, a person who's probably the biggest expert in the world, at least in the United States, on national debt. Let's bring in the Honorable David M. Walker. David, welcome to the show. I think you have your mute button on. You have to unmute yourself. Okay, now we can hear you. Very good. Okay. Yes. We're talking about some exciting things that are happening today. One is the Chevron Exxon potential merger. I believe they haven't merged yet, but they would create the world's second largest oil company. The first one being Aramco out of Saudi Arabia. Notice the United States, we can merge two huge companies. We're still not number one. That was pretty important. And the other thing is that attracts Shaquille and me and the investing world is the GameStop run-up of the GameStop shares. I don't know if you saw that, David, but years ago when I studied securities law, I mean, at one point in time, I took all the corporate courses. I was going to be a corporate attorney, and I moved to Florida to practice and became a state planning attorney because there weren't corporations in Florida. They're all retired people. So you do estate planning. But be of that may, I remember there was this whole theory called pump and dump that was illegal. I don't do securities law anymore, but you're not supposed to, if you're securities license, tout a stock. Tell everybody how great it is. Tell everybody to go buy it while you took a position in it. And then once it reached heights, you sell it, you dump, you cash out, and let the investors go what they want. They call it pump and dump.
I don't even see what the problem is. I mean, the stock went in a week and a half, went from $9 to 325.
Oh, you don't see the problem.
Yeah. It could be the next Tesla. They could be losing money and have look, this company could have a 1,700 price to earnings ratio, and it would be fine. I mean, what's the problem?
I sat there and I'm going like, look, all the people I work with in my company that are securities licensed, they would be fearful of the SEC and FINRA shutting them down by playing the game that was done just directly on social media last week or the last couple of weeks, and they all know the rule. It's pump and dump. Well, what are your thoughts, David?
Well, first, help me out. Okay. I can understand if you have a technology company that is an innovator that could have significant upside potential, or some other type of company, whether it be biotech or whatever else, that's an innovator that could have some significant upside potential. But unless I'm wrong, GameStop is a retailer, aren't they?
That's right. They're a retailer.
Aren't they? So they're not creating new intellectual capital. I mean, they're a retailer for electronic games. Now, don't get me wrong, electronic games are doing real well right now. A lot of people.
Not their model though.
No, I know, not that model. Okay, so what I'm saying is that it's totally irrational to me, but it does, and I don't own any GameStop. Okay, GameStop stock. Okay, right. It's been incredibly volatile. Last time I looked, about 20 minutes ago, it was down 20% today. So it's incredible volatility.
It dropped yesterday as well.
I mean, the SEC needs to look into it. There's absolutely no question about that. But let me mention one other thing real quick. Okay, we have legislation now that's being debated in Washington about another round of COVID-related legislation. And the House has already passed a bill that's proposing to allocate another $1.9 trillion on top of about $4 trillion that we've already allocated to COVID-19 related matters. And now you've got 10 senators, GOP senators, that are meeting with the president today, offering their counter of about $600 billion. Now, I'm involved in a group called No Labels, which is promoting transpartisanship, not left, not right, forward, focusing on results, trying to get people to work together and get across the aisle to get some things done. And I was asked to take a look at the bill and provide some comments on the bill. You know how many pages this thing is? 5,193 pages.
So what are you doing tonight? You're getting your cup of coffee, David, and coffee, and start reading up, brother.
Not one member of the House of Representatives or the Senate will read a 5,593 page bill. It is an absolute outrage. Okay. It is one of the reasons why people in this country have lost confidence in the system, you know. And so I was asked, well, gee, how can we slim this down? I made it very simple. I said, first, if it doesn't directly relate to COVID, out. Secondly, if it does directly relate to the domestic COVID-19 issues, properly target it to those who are really in need. And in addition to that, appropriately condition it to make sure that they achieve certain objectives. For example, you know, if we want to give another $1,000, another $1,400 per person, make sure that it's targeted to middle and lower income people. Okay, lower middle and lower income people. It was not properly targeted last time. It's not. Lower the limits. In addition to that, if we want to give more money to schools, you know, in order to help them be able to be able to have a safer environment, conditioning it on them doing in-person instruction with appropriate safeguards. By that I mean social distancing, wear masks, have appropriate disinfectant, which we do at the Naval Academy, right? And that may mean that you have to have some of the students in, you know, 3 days a week, other students in 2 days a week, and you rotate it and you do it a hybrid schedule. But this idea of just throwing money out there, not properly targeting it, not properly conditioning it, you know, is mindless. So, you know, we'll see what happens. You know, hopefully they'll come to some bipartisan agreement that'll be somewhere between $600 billion and $1.9 trillion.
But I think this was the issue, David, you know, last year with the Republicans having the Senate, was that there was a lot of disagreement about how much money was going to things that really didn't have anything to do with COVID. And one of the things that I think led to a lot of resentment amongst, you know, GOP members was the idea that, you know, there would be a freezing of higher education loans, that there would be almost a bailout of Democrat states with the debts that they've got and things like that. That doesn't have anything at all to do with COVID. Now, those are issues that can be debated, absolutely, and those are things that policy can be set on. But COVID was not, and the COVID relief package was not the right a time or place to do that. I think that, you know, bipartisan supporters, or I should say supporters of Democrats and Republicans, are both equally frustrated that, you know, at a crucial time in America's history, at a time when, you know, every American was hurting, the politicians and the leaders, and, you know, they're not leaders, they're representatives, decided not to represent, but instead decided to go down the path of partisan politics, and that's a real shame. It's let down people in America. America's not alone in that. We've seen politics take over this issue in many other countries, including my own. But it's a disgrace, and I think that, you know, these people should be reminded that they are there to represent the interests, first and foremost, of their constituency, as well as represent the interests of the nation and the state, you know, better. While I've just got you very quickly, talking about reading, I did manage to get through some.
That looks familiar.
This, on the other hand, I was quite surprised. I haven't opened this one yet, but I was quite surprised because it came wrapped and it came in a box of its own. But
oh, wow.
So I do have two of your books. I'm halfway through, or a bit more than halfway through this one, and I'm reading about 8 books at the moment. So I sort of flitter from one book to another. But I do have them finally.
Well, thank you. Let me know your thoughts after you get through it.
Yeah.
Okay.
Oh, definitely.
Well, it has a great title. America's still a superpower in 2040 ?
Are
Because
they a superpower in 2020 is the question.
well, yeah, well, 2030.
I think we still are today, but
yeah,
start
but
good.
but it is a problem. And the other problem is that what David you keep pointing out is the national debt. Okay, 1.9 trillion, which is no small number. What is the plan to pay for it, Counselor?
First, I think it's important that we understand, okay, not all debt is equal. We're not going to default on our debt because it's guaranteed by the Constitution, all right? And we don't have to pay off all our debt, all right? What we have to do is we have to get debt as a percentage of the economy down to a reasonable and sustainable level over a period of the next 10 to 20 years, okay? In addition to that, we have to be very concerned about how much of the budget is allocated to interest, because what do you get for interest? Nothing. And so, you know, the problem is that we were already on an imprudent and unsustainable fiscal path before COVID-19. Now we're in much worse shape. Do we need to do something else for COVID-19? Yes, but it needs to be properly targeted and conditioned, okay? And then what we have to do is that once we get past COVID-19, and we will get past COVID-19, we need to recognize that the political system is dysfunctional, and that you're not going to solve this problem piecemeal, and you're not going to solve it through the regular order. And therefore, we need a new statutory commission that learns lessons from Simpson-Bowles, that meaningfully engages the public with the facts, the truth, the tough choices, that solicits their input, and then makes a series of recommendations to the Congress that is designed to meet a stated objective within a period of time, that where everything is on the table, that will be guaranteed a vote in Congress. That's what we need. And I'm working with a number of parties, meaning individuals, including persons who were on the Simpson-Bowles Commission to try to make this a reality, including No Labels and the people that are involved in the problem solvers and the bicameral, if you will, because that's where the solutions are. The solutions are center right, center left, who recognize that compromise is not a bad word, and that compromise is essential in order to achieve progress and to have sustainable success. Because,
yeah, I think that you're right, that the moderate Republicans and moderate Democrats really have to, tell the hard right and the hard left, to settle down so that progress can be made. One of the things that I'll say in relation to US debt levels, and of course, I think you and I differ slightly in our concern over the issue, but I'm very worried about the unfunded liabilities at $150 trillion, which are going to come onto the books in the next 10 or 15, 20 years.
Yeah.
One of the things that I'll say is I actually think that in the first place, when it comes to social issues and some of the things that are concerning to young people, some of the things that are concerning to older people who perhaps don't have access to medical care and nursing home care and all those sorts of things. I think that one of the things that the United States may consider doing is increasing as a percentage of the GDP, the total amount of tax take that they have. I think that more along the OECD average, around the 30% mark, would probably make a bit more sense. I don't think you will achieve that by increasing the marginal rate of tax. I think you need to have a more broad-based tax system to get there. One of the things I would like to see for the United States, and really for most countries, but especially for the United States in its current condition, is for it to target government expenditure as being a percentage of the GDP. Now, obviously, you always have to do that looking backwards, but that is going to mean that you cannot fund absolutely everything. And so there has to be a sensible approach to, okay, here are all the things we would like to fund. Should we partially fund some of them? Should we just fund these things and not others? What are the things that are of priority? And if you can maintain government spending at those levels and sort of get the debt under control, or certainly not seeing it balloon any further, I think that over the next 50, 100 years, you'll start to see inflation eat away, whittle away that debt as being the problem that it is right now. The problem that I would see with doing that is that political terms, for the presidency are 4 to 8 years. And even if you're running as a senator, you may get in your 30s or 40s and have a 30 or 40 year career. But I think for most people, most politicians, they're only looking 4 years ahead or 6 years ahead in some cases. And that's a problem. There needs to be this is what we're going to do for this country, and this is our vision, and that's something that is sort of agreed and is where the country is going to go for a long period of time. Otherwise, if it's always going to go down the path of, well, you've got this benefit and I don't have this benefit and that sort of thing, I think that could be very problematic. Again, one of the issues that I would say is the interest rate payments we talked about. Interest rates now are at historical lows. What happens if they go up to their average? I think the average in the United States is around 5%.
We're toast.
If you've got 150, 180 trillion in unfunded liabilities, $30 trillion, currently on the books, let alone what the Fed's sitting on, you're talking $200 trillion at a 5% average interest rate over history. If you were to go back to that, that's $10 trillion. That's half of the country's GDP just in interest. Yeah. So that's going to be a problem.
I think you'll find that when you get through the book, a lot of those issues are directly related. Okay. But what we talk about is the debt held by the public, the debt subject to the debt ceiling limit. We then talk about the liabilities that are on the balance sheet, the unfunded obligations that aren't on the balance sheet, and those are the biggest numbers, right?
Which one should I be looking at? The Come Back America. Maybe I should switch to that one.
Yeah.
The big difference is Come Back America was 2010.
No, you said that your book addresses the issue. Which
both
one?
do. They both do.
Okay.
Here's the difference.
Yeah.
American 40 still a superpower ? Is broader. It's more up to date.
Yeah.
And it's more informed by the unprecedented 10,000-mile, 27-state fiscal responsibility tour that I did in 2010, where 77 to 97% of Americans agreed on specific solutions to get debt to GDP down to a reasonable, sustainable level, which included revenue increases, which included restructuring social insurance programs, which included reprioritizing and reducing projected spending. Look, the primary problem is a spending problem, but you can't solve the problem with spending constraints alone. We are taxing at below average levels, or we are spending at above average levels, and that gap is growing.
I think as well, David. Yeah, my complaint, I've aired that quite a few times on this show, in previous episodes of this show, is that the tax system is unfair, and some of the unfairness occurs in places where the everyday person just doesn't care. So, for example, when you talk about taxing the top 1%, if you're taxing the top 1% of income earners, those people end up at tax rates, depending on what state they live in, where they're hitting those 50% tax rates. Yet you see other people who are also in the 1%, but because they're not earning money, but they're deriving it either from capital gains, or they're deriving it because their asset values that they're already on, which normally benefits from inflation, their assets have increased and they're able to borrow money against those assets. And that becomes a tax-free proposition. Now, that's without talking about gaming the system and using trusts and all the other tax minimization strategies that you have. What you end up seeing is that one group of people in the same income and asset bracket are paying one set of taxes, and another group isn't paying any. And I think a lot of people who are not in those categories, who aren't in the 1%, but are just in the average middle class, go, oh, well, it's just rich people complaining about taxes. There's an inherent unfairness in the system. And, I know Nick has said to me before, well, the things are complicated. I don't believe that you need 70,000 pages of tax code. I don't think any country does. Nick says, well, life gets complicated. My response to that is, I've not read the Torah, so I don't know how big it is, but the Bible is what, 1,500 pages, 2,000 pages. The Quran probably about the same. The holy books for the main Abrahamic religions are less than 5,000 pages. So if you can get a book that tells you all about life from God at 5,000 pages, I don't think we need 70,000 pages of tax code.
Okay. Well, he keeps trying to put me out of business, but as they say on Pawn Stars, that ain't happening, Shaquille. The tax code is difficult, built to stay that way.
I think it's fair to say that we need more revenue that is more equitable and that is raised through a simpler code. You are right that the wealthiest people don't make they don't make their money through wages. Okay.
Sure.
And wages are not only subject to income taxes, they're subject to payroll taxes.
Right.
Right.
That's true.
And so while I think there's no question that the consolidated effective tax rate for the wealthy is not what it needs to be, I can also tell you that depending upon the year, you've got 35 to 45% of Americans that pay zero in income taxes. All right. Yes, they pay payroll taxes, but they get something for those payroll taxes. They get Social Security and they get Medicare, which are subsidized to differing degrees. All right. And in some, about 20% of those actually get money back through the Earned Income Tax Credit, which was put into place by Reagan in an effort to try to reduce the disemployment effects associated with raising the minimum wage, which, by the way, needs to go up and will go up because it hasn't been raised since 1996.
I don't think I have to, with due respect to you, former Comptroller General,
Yep.
I actually don't agree that the minimum wage should go up.
Okay.
I think that when you put the minimum wage up, it can actually disenfranchise some people who perhaps don't have the skills or the education required to do a job by saying, well, you know, I'll come work for you, but you know what? I'll work for less because I need the experience. If the employer can't do that, then all of a sudden those people are unable to even enter the workforce. But the second thing I would say there is it's one thing to focus just on the wage. And I know that the cost of living is high and often the minimum wage, especially at $7.25 an hour in the US, isn't high enough to sustain oneself. But we also need to focus on the cost of living and what do poor people's lifestyles entail today versus what they did 20 years ago, what they did 50 years ago. So I think that just focusing on that may not actually work. And one of the concerns I would have is if you increase the minimum wage, you increase the amount of money circulating in that group of people. That can drive up the prices of goods and services in that area. And what ends up happening is you end up seeing inflation occur. And we've seen that in the past when we've increased wages, is that you've seen inflation occur in those areas, and then you've actually seen that money move straight up to the top, as it often does. And New York in the 40s was a great example of this. They did have a minimum wage. I think it was, 25 cents an hour, 30 cents an hour, but hardly anybody was actually on it. It was a moot point because everybody was on 40 and 50 cents an hour.
Counselor, just to set the record straight, we do know that cost of living index increases for taxes so that you avoid paying taxes are automatically built into the Internal Revenue Code. However, cost of living increases were never built into the minimum wage. So if you believe that the minimum wage should not go up, then I think we should have a freeze on the taxes exemptions continually increasing as they're hit with the higher cost of living. In other words, Counselor, no problem, your taxes should go up.
But let's clarify.
Do you believe then that you would be better off being poor today or better off being poor 50 years ago?
No, I believe that we need to have more equitable distribution, Counselor. See, the real problem is this: the real problem, Counselor, the way capitalism is designed, it's like a winner-take-all game at poker or at the blackjack tables. Okay, somewhere along the line, you need a leveling effect, and we haven't had a leveling effect in a long time. So what's happening is that we end up in a situation we are today, took place over a period of years as Ronald Reagan created a great divide as he lowered the high income tax rate of the wealthy people and he froze the minimum wage of the poor people. So what he got today, you have 1% that complain they pay 40% of the taxes, yet they receive 70% of all income and all assets in the United States. Where's your complaint?
That's not what the stats show at all, right? The people that earn the top 20% of the income of the United States pay 40% of the taxes to the United States, right? But look,
and Counselor, they have 40% of all the assets in the United States.
And so what's that got to do with anything?
They're paying their equitable share. They should be happy that they paid 40% of all the taxes. They should be thrilled because they have 40% of all the assets.
Yeah, but that's a whole group. That's not the individual people, right? And I think
that's as a group, Counselor. I agree.
When we're going to talk about minimum wages, I think we should target things that will actually have an effect and target things like providing education, providing opportunities, not just bringing down the rich, because without the rich, there'd be more opportunities.
Yeah, I agree with you. my understanding is the last time we raised the federal minimum wage, the federal, because understand different states have different minimum wages that are well in excess of the federal minimum wage,
Right.
was 1996, and it was $4.75 an hour.
Right.
The equivalent of $4.75 an hour in 2020 is $7.85.
Yeah.
Now,
Yeah. Well,
oh, by the way, there are exceptions.
Yeah.
There are for young people or whatever. I don't know anybody that makes $4.75 an hour at any age. Okay, because the more skills that you have, the more you're going to make. And in fact, you can go out and even in the fast food restaurants, you can find them paying, $15 an hour because of supply and demand, right? So it is a complicated issue. I agree.
it's complicated. Right.
But the wage, hasn't gone up since 1996. Okay. And while inflation hasn't been nearly as bad since 1996, it has been, I think, about 65%,
David, if I could just say, though, I wouldn't want to be on $7.25 an hour anywhere in the United States. Certainly there are some states, like Alabama, like Mississippi, where $7.25 an hour certainly takes you a lot further than it would in Los Angeles or New York or some of the more expensive cities. I don't think that capitalism, is just a winner takes all situation. And if we're going to talk about tax rates and things like that, and the minimum wage, I think it's also important to note that $7.25 is not actually the total amount that people are taking home. Firstly, if they're on $7.25, they're not paying any tax in the first place. Then they're getting government subsidies in various forms, whether it be healthcare vouchers and what do you call it, SNAP or whatever it is, food stamps. All those different benefits have a monetary value associated with them. Social services tend to be a lot higher with people who are in that poor sort of condition. And I actually think that all of that needs to be factored in, as well as looking at how many people who are poor today were in that group 20 years ago and will be in that group 20 years from now. That yes, you are probably quite correct that we haven't seen an increase in minimum wages, but what we have seen is a lot more mobility over the last 20 years of people who, in the 80s, in the 90s, were in that bottom, 10% of the country who have, made their lives better, have built a better future for themselves and their children, and have actually come out of that group. So, I think it's sort of misleading if we just pretend as though these people end up at $7.25 an hour and stay there forever.
Let me come back real quick, and then I'm going to go back to Nick. First, we can agree on one thing that government doesn't do right now. It doesn't look at the total pie, all right? And I agree with you. You just can't look at wages. You have to look at benefits. You also have to look at public benefits that lower income people get that middle and upper income people don't get. So I totally agree with you on that. Same thing with regard to comparing compensation of public sector employees to private sector employees. Many people in government only want to look at the cash wages. They don't want to consider current and deferred benefits, the additional job security, and a variety of other things. So we need to look more holistically in a whole range of areas, including these two that we just talked about.
Totally agree. Yes, and I do have my IBM TV cup also, for what it's worth. But yeah, we
Mine must fail. But go ahead.
Well, the other thing is, and I know we're not addressing on this program, ultimately we're going to have to address Social Security because Shaquille and everybody keeps hitting these unfunded liabilities. And our Social Security system at a certain point in time is going to go negative on us. In other words, we're going to be having to go to the U.S. government to borrow money to fund Social Security. Now, part of it,
2031.
Oh, you even know the date. Thank you, David. I knew you're on top of it, Counselor. 2031. Okay, but
chapter in the book.
Yeah, but I have the book expert right here who's on top of it. 2031. Now, one thing we've never did is make an age adjustment to our Social Security system as people are living longer in the United States. And empirically, I see people age 70, they're still, at least when I was doing estate planning, people were still able to make decisions work until they're about 80 years old in a service economy, which we predominantly are. Now, with that, what is this age 66 retirement stuff all about? I mean, I think it's frankly a little bit too young.
First, in 1983, the normal retirement for Social Security was increased from 65 to 67, gradually. And one of the things that needs to happen is to gradually increase it further over time and index life expectancy. Because the truth is, our economy is very different today than it was in 1935 when Social Security was created. Lifespans are a lot longer than we were but there are certain occupations that you need to consider. I mean, for example, one of my grandfathers was a mine worker. The other one was a steel worker. They're not in the service economy. They can't work as long. And so that's one of the things you have to think about when you're reforming the system. And there's a chapter that talks about how do you reform it to make it solvent, sustainable, secure. That got 77% support from a representative group of voters. Representative groups of voters.
Places at once.
And hello. Yes, I mean, and then that's, you know, we got to look at some of these solutions and start putting them into action. And we're not getting ahead right now. And I agree with a lot of things that were said, as well as is that, you know, we've done a lot of executive orders in less than 30 days. Nobody's really taking a look at what's really needed. We're just jumping again. I think for the pandemic situation, you know, there's still a lot of people unemployed that don't have money. A lot of people got money that didn't need it. I was just reading a lawsuit about it, a huge criminal lawsuit. And my thing is that what we should have done was set up a payroll system. Companies should have sent into the government, these are all the people who are on our payroll. Let's just get some money issued out to them until businesses got picked back up. What that would have done was given people a comfort zone that they still had money coming. Benefits probably could have still been paid for. Houses could have been paid for. And the money would have circulated downstream where it needed to be a lot longer, rather than just handing out a stimulus check of $1,200 every 9 months. So I don't think another stimulus check, I agree with you on that too, David. I don't think another stimulus check has been an answer. And there have been a lot of people who took advantage of the PPP, a lot of big companies who took the money and sat on it. Because I kept asking, where's all this money? We put it into circulation. It's not circulating. So I think some accountability, risk management, which our country has never had. And I think they need to start putting the money in the hands that it needs to be in. And that's the people who needed it, the people who lost their jobs. We saw questions from people the other day about, hey, you know, I'm a hardworking single mom and I don't have any money coming in, and a stimulus check didn't help her. So, and I'm not just standing up for the single moms out there. There are single dads that are in the same boat. There are married couples with kids that are in the same boat. And you know what? Cutting off the schools, I agree with you too, David. That's not the way. That's just not the way. So we're unfortunately at the top of the hour. It's been a great Economic Monday. Hope to see everyone next week. Anyone have any wrap-up comments, David?
No, I'm in good shape. Thank you. Appreciate the opportunity. I'll try to tune in next week.
I appreciate it, David. Jack, you got anything?
No, good seeing David again. There's mountains of things I could talk about, but I think I'll save that for next week. Over to you, Sasha.
I agree with both of you gentlemen. We'll have more discussion next week. We'll have more data, more news, and so on. So why not to save it for next week then?
And more money to a better economy. Take care.
Okay, very good. Yeah.
Bye-bye.